King of the Oathbreakers is a card that was introduced in the Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth expansion, and it's a bomb and limited, cool design, and it synergizes with an old card from Champions of Kamigawa in such a way that it makes it look like they were made for each other, even though they were made about 20 years apart. So it is possible that somebody at the Wizards design team had Horobi Death's Wail in mind when they made the King of the Oathbreakers, but honestly, I suspect it's more coincidence than anything else. And I want to give a huge shout out to Twitter user ThemMTG for pointing out this interaction. This is one I did not come up with this myself, but I did want to highlight it on this channel because it is incredible. So, King of the Oathbreakers. It is a 3/3 for 2 white/black with flying that says whenever King of the Oathbreakers or another spirit you control becomes the target of a spell, it phases out. Whenever King of the Oathbreakers or another spirit you control phases in, create a tapped 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. So the way that works, whenever King of the Oathbreakers gets targeted by anything, it just blinks out of existence. It ceases to be. And that is useful because it dodges kill spells. If your opponent targets it with a direct removal spell, King of the Oathbreakers just disappears, the removal spell fizzles, and then when it comes in, you get a spirit as a nice little bonus. The way that works with Horobi's a 4/4 for 2 black/black with flying that says whenever a creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, destroy that creature. Now, the cool thing about this is if you're playing both of them in the same deck, you are the owner of both permanents. And as such, they trigger simultaneously and you get to choose the order in which they resolve. So if an opponent targets Horobi or the King of the Oathbreakers or any other spirits you have lying around, normally Horobi would trigger, and the thing would die before the spell could occur. There's no effect whatsoever. The thing just dies. But you can stack it so that the King of the Oathbreakers trigger resolves first, and the spirit phases out. And then the Horobi trigger will resolve. The creature's no longer on the battlefield as far as the effect is concerned, so it can't be destroyed. This ability fizzles, and then the spell fizzles, whatever it may be. So if you were to build a deck around this, you could build it with a lot of spells that can target your things. Even something that says, you know, target creature gets -X/-X, like the Black March from the newest Kamigawa, where a creature gets -X/-X. To get this trigger, you could choose 0. Like, you don't care. The effect could be, like, the spell's effect is irrelevant. All it checks is that you are targeting the creature. And these things occur. So that's really, really cool. So your opponents basically just can't spot remove your things. Now, this does not help against board wipes because nothing is being targeted. So they do not protect themselves in that way. If they are phased in, if they're phased out when an opponent hits a board wipe, then they're safe, which is really cool. But they phase in on your upkeep. So if either of your spirits phase out, they're treated as not existing until your following turn when they phase back in. And then the King of the Oathbreakers' second ability would trigger. The other thing to note is Horobi Death's Wail says that if a creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, if your opponent has an ability that can target a creature, the King of the Oathbreakers cannot save it. That is noteworthy. So if they have, say, a Prodigal Sorcerer that has just tap, deal 1 damage to a thing, all of a sudden, King of the Oathbreakers doesn't trigger on that. It only triggers on spells. So they tap the Prodigal Sorcerer, targeting your King of the Oathbreakers. Horobi would trigger, and King of the Oathbreakers would die. Be aware of that. But this is incredibly powerful simply because Horobi's biggest weakness has always been that it itself becomes sustainable or becomes vulnerable to every targeted spell. You're basically adding you're changing every targeted spell from whatever effect it has to destroy target creature. Like that's ultimately what you're doing with Horobi, and that includes spells that target Horobi, which is why it hasn't really seen play. But they work together in that regard too, because Horobi Death's Wail is a spirit, meaning that the King of the Oathbreakers ability protects it. If your opponent attempts to target Horobi, or if you choose to target Horobi with a spell, it will phase out before it is destroyed, and therefore Horobi will actually remain phased out and safe. So if your opponent, that's the other thing, if you were to build a deck around this, have plenty of instant speed spells that can target your things. Because if your opponent tries to throw out a Damnation, Wrath of God, whatever board wipe de jour they're working with, you could simply cast 2 1-drop targeted spells at instant speed, blink King of the Oathbreakers, and then blink blink Horobi, phase out Horobi, and then phase out the King of the Oathbreakers. You can even stack it such that they're both on the field when they peace out. It doesn't really matter. So in any event, as long as King of the Oathbreakers disappears last, you're good. In any event, this interaction is absolutely bonkers. I know I wanted to do a feature on it, so thank you so much for checking it out. If you found this helpful and are interested in other rules, interactions, discussion, or individual card deep dives, please subscribe and like this video. Also, leave a comment below if you have rules questions or want me to talk about individual cards. Please let me know down in the comments below. I love doing it. It is kind of my favorite thing. So thank you so much. I'll catch you on the next one.